when, as Protestants, we field criticisms from Christians and other traditions, it's very easy to get defensive, and we need to be so careful to just regularly return to the Holy Spirit and say, help us to respond with grace and with love, as well as with truth, well, whatever is coming in. And actually, one of the things I've found is so often we can learn something from the criticism. So often there is some truth in it. Sometimes it's totally correct, and sometimes it's 50% correct or some other percentage. But often there's something you can learn if you stop and you humble yourself before what's being said, because a lot of contemporary Protestant practice has drifted from what the Reformation really was about. Let's give an example. How sacred do we regard the Lord's Supper to be? Is this a serious practice that, Saturday night, I know the Lord's Supper is coming tomorrow at church, and so I'm mindful of this, and I'm preparing my heart to receive the Lord's Supper, this kind of thing. I'm taking this so seriously. Sometimes Protestants don't take the Lord's Supper with near enough earnestness, and we don't understand how precious it is. We don't understand, even apart from the theological questions that Christians work through, just the sheer importance of this sacrament that Christ has given us. So that really, though, is not reflective of the 16th century Protestants and the 17th century Protestants and the 18th. In some of my videos, I've argued that this starts to come in a little more in the 19th century and 20th century. It's more of a modern development within Protestantism. In the early years of Protestantism, actually the focus was reclaiming and recentering the Lord's Supper. In the Middle Ages, lay Christians hardly ever got the Lord's Supper. It was usually once a year, and then only in one kind, not both bread and wine. And there's a lot of superstition in the medieval era, people thinking, if I get a little piece of the Eucharist and I bury it in my garden, I'm going to get better crops this year, and this kind of thing. Lots of adoring and observing the consecrated host rather than actually eating, which is not what Jesus taught us to do. And so the Reformers came along and actually recentered the Eucharist. And they said we need it frequently. We need both the bread and the wine, not just one. And we need to actually eat and drink and feast, not just look at it from a distance or watch as it's being paraded around. And those were Protestant emphases. There were disagreements among the Protestants about exactly how to understand the theology of Christ's presence in the Lord's Supper. But they all agreed on the sacredness of this rite, and that has fallen away somewhat. So when we're receiving a criticism about this, this criticism will come up all the time, that in Protestant circles, it's trivial and light, whereas perhaps in this other non-Protestant tradition, it's sacred and serious. That's something we can learn from. And the solution there, I don't think, is to go outside of Protestantism. I would say it's to go back to our sources, go back and retrieve early Protestant practice. There's a great book in the Puritan paperback series. I think it's by Thomas Watson about the Lord's Supper. Very short, easy to read. I love to encourage Christians to read that. It's not complicated or difficult as a book. You could probably read it in about an hour or less. But it's so edifying, and it helps enrich our theology of the Lord's Supper, or the Eucharist, it's sometimes called. And so that's just one example of where learning can happen if we are willing to receive criticisms with humility. And sometimes I think that defensive instinct kicks in, and we fail to learn what we need to learn from the criticism, and then we can also be uncharitable in response. And the simple fact is, there are some terrific people in these other traditions, and we have the obligation to love those people, to treat them well, and to appreciate what common ground we have. That is not compromise. That is actually what obedience to Jesus looks like. Now, we want to be candid about our differences as well. We want to be honest about that. And I've been drawn into the work of Protestant apologetics, something I never thought I would get involved in, and simply started doing it to try to meet needs. Because I'm on YouTube and I'm seeing there's all these questions that people are asking, and they're looking for answers, and there aren't as many works of Protestant apologetics as you'd expect. For some reason, Protestants tend to do apologetics for Christianity and sometimes for their own denomination, but we don't do as much for Protestantism as such. So I got drawn into this, seeking to try to meet needs and serve people. And I do believe in that. I do believe in giving arguments to explain why Protestantism is correct, and I'm happy to do that. And I don't do this perfectly, but I want to do it with a charitable heart, and that is something we need to keep returning to. Somebody once said, what you win them with is what you win them to. If we persuade someone by means of an uncharitable method of engagement, we may have convinced them, but we're actually drawing them to something that may be unhealthy and isn't the way forward for us as the people of God. So it's just as important that both of these values, truth and love, we have to try to find the tension of holding on to both of those. And all of us will be tempted in different ways. But the important thing is to be candid in our arguments about the truth, but to do so with genuine wishing well upon the people that we're conversing with. And there's really no substitute for that or shortcut around that. And if we're doing that, if we're talking with someone and we genuinely care for them as a person, we're willing to learn from them, we appreciate their gifts and their values, we're willing to partner with them on those issues where we agree. We have a lot of points of agreement. Think of the social issues that we're facing in our culture. We can be co-belligerents. That's an easy one, addressing some of these issues. When we have that heart disposition to someone, they can tell. It comes across to them. And that's not only going to make us more persuasive, it's going to help us win them to something that actually honors Christ. And the most important piece of this for some of us will be how onlookers are experiencing the conversation, because it's a sobering thought that non-Christians are looking in on how Christians are conducting our dialogue. And if we engage with other Christians in a censorious way, where there's anger and there's pride, there's a lot of pride in our theological disagreements, that is noticed. When we engage with love and humility, that is also noticed, without compromising the truth, but speaking with personal graciousness and love. Non-Christians then look in, and they're more likely to say, well, I'm going to give the gospel itself more of a hearing because of how these Christians are talking with each other.